Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. As always, thank you so much for being here. If you have been listening to the podcast for the past few weeks, I sure hope that you have been enjoying our theme, which has been thriving through the holidays. Now, in case you haven't been able to listen to all the episodes, or you feel like you're playing catch up, or you just feel like there's been a lot of good information in the episodes and you want to have a resource for keeping track of them, I want to remind you that we do create a roadmap for you every month of the podcast. And this month, you can register for the roadmap by going to graceandgrit.com/thrive. And what you'll find on that roadmap are all the key takeaways from all the episodes this month, and even a few additional resources to help you deepen your study of the topics that we cover on the podcast. So again, this is a totally free resource, and you can get yours by going over to graceandgrit.com/thrive. I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season. And I want to ask you a favor, because it is the season of giving. And I am not always so good at asking for things. But if you have been a longtime listener of the show, you know that one thing I don't shy away from is asking for people to leave reviews on iTunes for the podcast. It means a ton to us when people leave reviews for the show for a couple of reasons. Number one, it tells us that the message is landing and people are enjoying the show, but also it helps with the algorithm on iTunes so people can find the show more easily. So if you have 2 seconds this holiday season to head on over to iTunes and just quickly rate and review the show, it's just immensely appreciated. So thank you in advance for considering it. And I really would massively appreciate if you would take the time to do it. Now, if this is the first time you've listened to the show, I know that's a big ask. Obviously, I don't want you to rate and review it until you've listened to it. But if you enjoy the show today, or if you're somebody specifically who keeps coming back to listen to the show and you have yet to leave a review, please, please, please do us a favor and leave us a review this season. Now, today on the podcast, I want to talk all about immune TLC, because this time of year, more than any other, I see that people's immune systems are very intensely compromised. And it's really no surprise, right? For a lot of reasons, which I'll get to here in just a second. But first, let's just kind of quickly recap what the immune system actually is. Because I think for most of us, it's been a while since 8th grade biology. So it's always good to just kind of remind ourselves what the heck the systems in our body actually do. So the immune system is the body's natural defense system. And it doesn't live in just one part of the body. Rather, it's made up of a network of cells and molecules and tissues and organs that all work together to hopefully fiercely protect the body. Now, I say that this is a season where our immune systems tend to get more compromised than other times of the year, for the reason that, number one, a lot of women are sacrificing sleep at this time of year to cram more into an already overflowing schedule. So they're trying to get more done. And so they sacrifice sleep in order to be able to dedicate themselves more to the holidays. So that's one reason our immune system gets compromised. We also have higher levels of stress this time of year. Number one, it's the end of the year. But number two, for the reason I just mentioned, we're trying to cram more activity into an already full schedule, which can be very stressful. A lot of women are trying to make the holidays spectacular for everyone around them. And we're also around a lot of family and friends, which can be amazing and awesome and so wonderfully healthy. And it can also be a little bit stressful or a lot stressful. And then we have things like sugar and alcohol around us at every corner, which can definitely impact our immune system. We are also in close proximity to more people in many cases. Maybe not everyone is in close proximity to other people, but this time of year, a lot of people are traveling. A lot of events and celebrations and just living in general is inside. Because for a lot of people, we're living in cold climates. And so we're in enclosed spaces in closer proximity to people, and we're traveling more. So we're in cars more, we're in airplanes more. We're just spending a lot more time close to people. And we're not spending as much time outside. Now, of course, that depends on where in the world you live. Like I know in Australia right now, you guys are having summer. So for you, obviously, vitamin D is not going to be an issue. But for those of us who are experiencing winter right now and not getting outside as frequently, we aren't absorbing as much vitamin D, and that can definitely impact our immune system in a negative way. So all of these things combined, fatigue and stress and sugar and alcohol and the close proximity of people and travel and the lack of vitamin D is all a perfect recipe for suppressing our immune system and ultimately getting sick. And I've said this a lot on this podcast. I just see a pattern every single year amongst my community where people tend to get stressed out around the holiday. They tend to sacrifice sleep. They tend to consume more things that don't really bode well for their body. And then even though they have the best of intentions to get themselves back on track in the new year, typically what happens is people get sick. So I want to take a closer look at how each one of the elements I just mentioned impacts our immune system's ability to respond in a way that will actually defend us against viruses and bacteria. So let's first address the importance of sleep. One reason our immune system function is so closely tied to our sleep is that certain disease-fighting substances are released or created while we sleep. So our bodies need the hormones and proteins and chemicals that are produced in our sleep in order to fight off disease and infection. So sleep deprivation decreases the availability of those things, which leaves us a lot more susceptible to every virus and bacteria that we encounter. And also, when we aren't getting enough sleep, and we do get sick, we end up being sick for longer periods of time because our bodies lack the resources to properly defend themselves. So sleep is a really big part of our immune function. And if there was one thing I could recommend that you fiercely protect above all else this holiday season, it would be sleep. Because sleep is not only going to fortify your immune system and give you a fighting chance to defend yourself against the viruses and bacteria that you are exposed to, but it's also just going to make you a lot more fun to be around, and it's going to allow you to enjoy the holidays a heck of a lot more. Now, sugar, I mentioned, also debilitates our immune system because our gut health, our microbiome is a big part of our immune strength, right? So we have good bacteria in our gut and we have bad bacteria in our gut. And sugar feeds the not so great bacteria, which causes inflammation and, of course, weakens the immune system. But it also, when our microbiome is off kilter and we're feeding a lot of that bad bacteria, our gut health has a direct relationship with our brain health. So basically, sugar messes with our brain health and also affects our moods. And of course, I am no way suggesting that all sugar is bad. All right, I'm specifically talking about processed sugar. When you eat sugar sources like whole grains and fruits and vegetables, those are natural sources, and they also have a lot of fiber in them, right? So that can really help. It can really help to feed the healthier bacteria because fiber is a prebiotic, which means the good bacteria feeds off of fiber. And we want to promote the good bacteria. So fiber is really important to have in your diet. And if we're going to consume sugar, obviously we want to gravitate towards natural sugars, less of the processed stuff. So this brings us to alcohol, because alcohol essentially is sugar in our system, right? And for the same reason that sugar disrupts our microbiome, alcohol also contributes to that. So alcohol will disrupt the gut microbiome and prevent nutrients that your immune system needs in order to function properly from getting there. So your immune system is not getting the nutrition it needs in order to properly function in the presence of things like sugar and alcohol. And then, of course, and I briefly spoke to this already, but I just want to reiterate it. When we spend a lot more time in close proximity to people, we want to remember that our skin is one of the first lines of defense in our immune system. So when we're close to people because we're on an airplane or because we're just around a lot of family, because it's winter and we're spending a lot of time indoors with people, we're exposed to a lot more bacteria and viruses. So this is just a friendly reminder to wash your hands, right? Wash your hands and try to protect yourself from people coughing and sneezing and kissing and all of those things. I'm not saying don't kiss your loved ones, right? But be judicious. If someone is coughing and hacking, right, in the corner, you probably shouldn't kiss them. Vitamin D3. This is a really important conversation for immune health because there's been a lot of studies over the years that have shown that vitamin D is crucial to activating your immune defenses. And we really, without enough D3, you won't really be able to fight off the infections, the viruses, the bacterias, and things of that nature. So this may not be such a relevant conversation to those of you who are right now in really warm climates. I'm envious. But for those of us who live in places that have very cold and harsh winters, we're not outside as often. And even if we are outside, we aren't necessarily getting the sun exposure that we would typically get at other times of the year. So for us in Northwest Montana, we have pretty dark winters. So D3 deficiency runs rampant in this part of the country. Most clients that I have get tested for D3 deficiency usually don't just come back deficient. It's like they're way off the charts. It's massively deficient. So it's definitely something to consider. So do your research about D3, maybe talk to your primary care provider about supplementing with D3. It's not an expensive supplement, but it can go a really long way in helping you to fortify your immune system. But please don't hear me saying that you shouldn't be making an effort to get outside a lot, even if it is cold and even if you aren't seeing the sun. It is still beneficial for you to be outside as much as possible. So there are other things we could discuss, but those are kind of the primary things I wanted to mention at the start of this podcast today. And really to summarize, the best measure that you can take to fortify your immune system this time of year is to manage your total stress load, which again gets tricky around the holidays because we're enduring more stress rather than less stress. And here's the truth of it. Your body is brilliantly designed to handle a late night or two. Your body is brilliantly designed to take a hit from a little bit of sugar, specifically processed sugar, right? Your body can handle a little bit of dehydration. Your liver, assuming you have a healthy liver, can handle a little bit of alcohol. But what your body can't afford is to handle all of these things consistently without affecting your immune system. So having one late night is not detrimental to your immune system, but having multiple late nights on top of eating a ton of processed sugar, forgetting to drink water, drinking a ton of alcohol, having a ton of mental stress, being exposed to a lot of viruses because you're around a lot of people is not going to bode well for your immune system. So it is about managing your total stress load, which you've heard me say 10,000 times on this podcast. Now, something that I think goes a really long way in helping you to really stay mindful of your immune response is body awareness. Body awareness can go a really long way in helping you to identify illness or misalignment really early on. So specifically, the things I'm speaking to pay attention to are your energy levels, your moods, any inflammatory responses, like headaches, body aches, like weight gain overnight, like gaining, 3 to 5 pounds overnight. That's an inflammatory response. And the reason I say stay aware to those things is because often when your immune system is compromised, you'll feel a big drain in energy. You might notice that you're a lot more short-tempered or reactive than usual. And you will most certainly experience some kind of inflammatory response. So a lot of clients that I've worked with over the years, and this is definitely true of myself, notice that before they actually feel sick, there is some kind of inflammatory response happening in the body. So for some people, that's getting a headache. For some people, parts of their body that have been previously injured will start to act up. So if you have an old shoulder injury, you might notice your shoulder gets more achy. Or if you have an old knee injury, maybe you notice that your knees act up. I know that sounds bizarre, right? To predict that an old injury could be an indication to you that your immune system is compromised, that you're on the verge of getting sick. But I have seen this pattern play out so many times, it is so worth mentioning. I've also seen the overnight weight gain, which is an inflammatory response, be very closely linked to people's immune systems being suppressed. Because I have many clients who will gain 2 to 5 pounds overnight, and 24 to 48 hours later, they're full-blown sick. So if you are someone who weighs yourself on a regular basis and you do notice that your weight goes up and you haven't really done anything to cause that, meaning you didn't eat something that inflamed your system, or you didn't drink a bunch of alcohol, or you didn't have some kind of behavior that would have contributed to that. When it comes out of nowhere, I say proceed with caution because you might be getting sick. And it's so great to peg illness as early as possible because you can honor it more quickly, which means you will recover more quickly. One other thing worth mentioning that I notice a lot when people are on the verge of getting sick is if you are monitoring your heart rate, when you are about to get sick, you will notice that your heart rate goes up much more quickly than usual. And you have a much harder time recovering your heart rate. Now, not everybody tracks their heart rate, but for those of you who do, who wear a heart rate monitor when you do any kinds of cardio, if you see your heart behaving very differently, I say proceed with caution. Take extra good care of yourself because you might be on the verge of getting sick. So let's talk about some measures to take when you do get sick, because it's going to happen, right? If it doesn't happen during the holidays, it might happen after the holidays. And if it doesn't happen during the holidays or after the holidays, it might happen some other time in the year. It's good information to be armed with. Your most powerful contributor to recovery will be rest and sleep. Because remember, when you're sick, your body is demanding a lot more resources from you to heal you. And so when you're resting, you are giving your body a chance at generating the resources it needs to recover more quickly. And I always think of kids when I think of my son when he was young, and even now he's only 10 years old. But for the past 10 years, anytime my kid is sick, what do kids do when they're sick? They just want to sleep. And we let them, because kids don't have a big storyline about all the reasons why they can't sleep, right? They just sleep. And kids bounce back really quickly. Now, I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But one of the reasons is likely because they allow themselves to sleep. They sleep it off. Adults aren't so great at that. I see people doing the craziest things when they're ill. People saying to me, well, I haven't been feeling good for a couple of days. Do you think I should go to the gym? No. Because your body's already stressed out. Why on God's green earth would you add more stress to an already overly stressed system? Not to mention, why would you expose everybody else to what you have? So as difficult as it can be to give yourself permission to rest, it is the most powerful thing you could do to help yourself recover more quickly. Also, hydrate, right? Everything in your body requires water. And so if you are dehydrated, you need to give your body ample water to transport everything to where it needs to go, right? To keep the tissues and the cells humming along and doing what they need to do to get you well. I'm a huge fan of Epsom salt baths, especially when I'm catching my illness early on. So if I do notice that my energy level has dramatically shifted, my mood is changing, I'm experiencing some kind of inflammatory response, I always get in the Epsom salt bath. And I basically get the water as warm as possible. I'm very generous with the amount of Epsom salt that I put in my baths, which is usually about 2 to 3 cups. And I soak for a minimum of 20 minutes. And I have to tell you that every time I get out of the bath, all I want to do is go to bed. So I always make sure to take my bath right before I go to sleep. But 99.9% of the time that I take an Epsom salt bath, I wake up the next day feeling better. Not cured, right? Sometimes I'm still sick, but I definitely feel improved. And I will tell you, when I catch it early enough, I'm convinced that some Epsom salt baths have prevented me from getting full-blown sick. I would also say the same is true of elderberry. So elderberry is really one of the most commonly used medicinal plants in the world. Native Americans used it to treat infections. Egyptians have used it to help improve their complexions and to heal burns. It's been used throughout many cultures to help bolster the immune system. And today, elderberry is very often taken as a supplement to treat colds and flus. You can take it early on, so you can definitely take it as a preventative measure if you feel yourself getting sick. Some people take it just as a preventative measure, so they don't ever get sick. So you can take it as a preventative measure every day. Or when you start feeling sick, you start feeling a little bit misaligned health-wise, you can start taking it and you will likely not get as sick. You may not even get sick. That's happened to me many times. Again, I feel off kilter. And just like my Epsom salt baths, I'll start taking elderberry syrup and I never get full-blown sick. If I don't catch it early enough and I do get full-blown sick, I'm convinced that elderberry syrup helps to shorten the duration of the amount of time that I am sick. The final thing that I want to say to help you recover more quickly is to move your body. Please don't hear me say I'm asking you to go do an aggressive exercise program. That is far from what I'm saying. But movement is important when we're trying to get well because your lymph system is a really big part of your immune system. So your lymphatic system works the best when you move your body. Because your lymphatic system is your body's, basically, it's your drainage system. It's a network of blood vessels and lymph nodes that carry fluids from tissues around the body and into the blood and vice versa. And the lymphatic system has the primary role of protecting the body from outside threats like infections and bacterias, things of that nature. And when we aren't feeling well, we want our lymphatic system draining effectively, right? So when you move, it helps to keep the fluids in your lymphatic system circulating so you can detox more easily and you can also get nutrients to your cells more easily. And there's also, right, that's a really valid reason why being stagnant, not moving, causes you to feel more achy and stiff and prone to becoming sick. So just some gentle stretching, on the floor, going for gentle walks, doing some light yoga can be really helpful, specifically to your lymphatic system when you are ill. So just quickly recapping those steps, and please, obviously, these are not all the things you could do, but these are just the ones that I really wanted to make sure we covered today on this podcast. First and foremost, make sure you rest. Let yourself sleep. Hydrate really well. Soak in some Epsom salt baths. Consider taking some elderberry syrup. Do your research around it. Experiment with it. Because I'm a big believer that sometimes we just have to be willing to try something on to see if it works for us. Elderberry syrup has worked really well for my family. And finally, gentle movement. Those are all things that can definitely help you to recover more quickly. And good Lord, when we aren't feeling well, isn't that what we all want? Just make me better. I think I'm the worst sick person on the planet. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that you actually don't need any of these tips anytime soon. But in case you do, here they are. And maybe somebody around you will need the advice that was in this podcast episode. So just some things to consider. We have one more episode left in this month's theme, which is going to be all about just some powerful questions to consider as you roll into 2020. So if you're looking for ways to really ensure that 2020 is going to be a hugely impactful and powerful year for you, I would really encourage you to come back and listen to next week's episode. All right, my friends, remember you can get your free roadmap for this month's theme over at graceandgrit.com/thrive. I would massively appreciate you heading over to iTunes and leaving a review for the podcast. And I will see you here again, I hope, next week. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.